Hi everybody, Ali Akbarian from Mobility Engineering, your resident road safety expert, back again for another Q&A. Thank you very much for sending in those questions. We love them. And as my little flag, I'm going to get my flag back here because it's my trusty flag, which doesn't seem to want to work with me all the time, but yeah, it's there. So check out the button over there that's down there looking a little bit like that, and hit that subscribe button, and we're going to see it start moving away anyway. But yeah, help us get to that 10,000 subscriber mark, and we'll get more content and maybe a better flag that doesn't move around as much, or maybe something different. Anyway, on to today's question. So I am in front of our wheelchair accessible vehicle, wheelchair accessible caddy, because I have a question around traveling in the back of these vehicles for little children. So, and that's why we have a baby seat as well, but I'm going to quickly just explain everything in context so we're all on the same page. So we have a customer that has written in, or an OT with a customer that has written in, and they've said they have a child that is between 2 and 3 years old, and due to the ability of the parents to pick the child up and transfers and all of that kind of stuff, they basically have to transport in a wheelchair. However, they also realise that for children, so when they have to travel in a wheelchair in the back of a vehicle like this. So the child will be in a small child's wheelchair, and they'll bring them up and they will travel them in the wheelchair while they're sitting in there with a standard seatbelt around them, right? And the question has come up to say, what do I do? Because the road rules, they specifically say that my child who's 2.5, or roughly between 2 and 3 years old, needs to sit in a seat like that, which is one of these baby seats. So this is what we call a type B or a type G baby seat, depending on the size. It's got harness straps and a red button between the legs, red crutch buckle. So this is the restraint that I need to be using for my child between 2 and 3 as per the road rules. That is the legislated requirement. So what do I do if I'm required to travel in a wheelchair? What you need to do is you need to get an exemption from the road rules. So I'm just going to give you a little bit of a breakdown on a technical side. Rule number 266 in every single state and national legislation, road rule number 266, specifies that a child must be travelling in a child restraint, and if they're between 2 and 3, or actually from 6 months to 4 years is the minimum requirement, they must be in a restraint like that one down there. However, if they cannot travel in that requirement as per the law due to their medical condition, then they can get an exemption, and that exemption is quite a specific detailed one, and I would encourage you to go to rule number 266 and also the next rule 267, which specifies what it requires for an exemption. You have to go and see doctors, you have to see medical professionals, you may be able to see a higher level OT. Generally, OTs aren't able to prescribe that. It's generally someone from the medical profession. We've covered that in a video before. The reasons why, I don't really know. We've just sort of interpreted the road rules for you as such, and they are just a guideline to the interpretation of the road rules. But the long and short of it is the law requires a child up to the age of 4 to be travelling in that seat. It is technically illegal for them to travel in a wheelchair in this vehicle unless they have the documented paperwork that they are carrying with them at the time that they are travelling to say that they are exempt from that. And that documented paperwork is things like doctor certificates. There's a whole rule around the documented paperwork. We're not covering that in this video. We're just covering the fact that you are allowed to travel in the wheelchair instead of that seat, as long as you have the exemption paperwork in place. And there is a whole set of road rules around getting that exemption paperwork, which is rule number 267. Literally, if you just type into Google road rule number 267, it'll give you one of the first links will just be road rule, and it'll specify what it entails to be exempt from wearing a seatbelt or a child restraint, which a child restraint is classified as a seatbelt for a child under 16 years old, depending on the category of the child. So this would be, 6 months to 4 years, that would be their seatbelt as such. Okay, so hopefully that answers the question of, can my child between 2 and 3 years old or of child restraint age travel in a wheelchair in the back of a wheelchair van? Yes, they can, as long as you have all of the required paperwork and documentation and exemptions in place. All good, no worries. Okay, so bring back my subscribe flag. So like we said, hit that button that looks like that. Keep your questions coming in, and we'll see you next time.